Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready. What are we unpacking today?
Well, today we're tackling something pretty interesting. We're going to see if the whole rich dad, poor dad philosophy can really fly in Bangladesh. You know, all that stuff about financial smarts, building up your assets, and reaching financial independence.
Big questions for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Bangladesh has its own unique set of challenges and opportunities. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. But from what I've been reading, it seems like it could work if
If what?
if we adapt those rich dad, poor dad concepts to fit Bangladesh's realities.
I see where you're going with this. Okay, I'm on board.
Awesome. I'm glad you're here to help me navigate this because it's going to be a fascinating deep dive.
Well, I think what's really interesting is that the rich dad, poor dad principles themselves, like financial literacy, smart investing, and being an entrepreneur, aren't really tied to any specific place.
Right.
But it's the strategies, the how-to part, that needs to be customized to actually work in Bangladesh. That's where things get really interesting.
Absolutely. And almost all of the sources I've read really hit hard on financial literacy being like the most important foundation.
For sure.
But a lot of them point out that there's a huge gap in financial knowledge in Bangladesh, especially in rural areas.
It's true.
So what can be done to bridge that gap? I mean, where do we even start?
Well, what's really cool is that a lot of sources actually see technology, especially mobile apps, as a way to fix that problem.
Makes sense.
But they're not talking about just any old app, though. They're talking about specific ones like Monishika, which teaches financial stuff in Bangla using games, and there's Shiba, too, which offers quick investing lessons for folks who don't have the best internet.
Wow, that's so smart, tailoring it to the specific challenges people face.
Exactly. It's all about working within the limitations to make the most impact.
I love that. And, you know, it's perfect because I actually read somewhere that over 90% of people in Bangladesh have mobile phones. So the potential reach is enormous.
Exactly. It's already there, just waiting to be tapped into.
Okay, but it's not all about having practical skills, is it? You need the right mindset, too.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of what I read mentioned this cultural preference for stable jobs in Bangladesh, even if those jobs don't offer much in the way of financial growth.
It's about security, right?
Right. And so to shake things up a little, a lot of sources suggest showcasing real success stories. And I'm not talking about famous people or anything like that. I'm talking about everyday folks in Bangladesh who started small businesses and made something awesome out of them.
Right. Show people what's possible.
Exactly. It's about making entrepreneurship feel attainable, even if it seems a bit risky at first.
Definitely inspiring. But I have to be honest, one thing that concerns me is what some sources mention about the limited investment options in Bangladesh. It's not like here where you can easily buy stocks and bonds. So what are people supposed to do?
That's definitely a tricky part.
Yeah.
The usual ways to invest just aren't as available. So what a lot of sources are saying is we got to think outside the box.
I like that.
They suggest considering mutual funds as one option. And also, they mention checking out real estate, even if it's on a smaller scale, or maybe investing in promising local businesses.
Kind of like diversifying your portfolio so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
You got it. Spreading the risk. And speaking of building, the sources talk about something else that needs some work. The education system.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The sources say that right now, education in Bangladesh is way too focused on theory and not enough on actual skills. What they really push for is more practical stuff like workshops on managing money, business simulations, and giving students hands-on experience with making financial decisions.
So it's all about closing that gap between textbook knowledge and real-life experience.
Exactly. It's got to be relevant to what people are actually going through.
Okay, so we talked about skills and mindset and even the education system needing a revamp. But what about the actual nitty-gritty of starting a business? The sources mentioned quite a few challenges there.
Oh, yeah. They definitely brought up the challenges. We're talking about bureaucracy, problems getting funding, and just the general fear that a lot of people have when it comes to starting something new.
So how do we overcome those hurdles? Any good ideas out there?
Oh, for sure. A lot of the solutions they suggested involve a multi-pronged approach. One thing they mentioned is mentorship programs, which would be amazing for guiding aspiring business owners. And then there's microfinancing.
Yeah.
But not just in the old school way. The sources actually highlight platforms like Pathao Parabahan, which uses a gig economy model to provide income opportunities. Pretty cool stuff. Plus, they talk about business incubators, which can give startups the resources and support they need to get going. And this is where a model like the Grameen Bank really shines.
I was just thinking about that.
Right, they were pioneers in microloans, especially for women, and they proved that giving people access to financial tools can really empower them economically.
I love that example. It totally drives home the point. And it kind of leads into something else the sources talked about, the importance of family in Bangladeshi culture. They pointed out that financial decisions are often made as a family, not just individually.
Oh, absolutely. That's why family-inclusive financial education is so vital. The sources talk about how important it is for families to have open conversations about money and for kids to learn about financial stuff from a young age.
Starting them young, I like that.
Yeah, it's all about changing that mindset from just individual gain to thinking about the well-being of the entire family.
Right, it makes so much sense. But I keep wondering, with limited access to technology in some areas, how can we make sure that everyone benefits from these ideas?
That's where mobile platforms come into play. Even in rural parts of Bangladesh, platforms like bKash and Nagad have already revolutionized mobile banking.
I've heard of those, yeah.
So now it's about using that existing infrastructure to create educational content and financial tools specifically designed for mobile platforms.
Reach people where they are. So, after all that, what would you say is the main takeaway from all these sources? It seems to me like the rich dad, poor dad principles can work in Bangladesh, but they need some pretty specific tweaks to fit the context.
You nailed it. It's not about throwing out the whole rich dad, poor dad playbook. It's about adapting those core principles to the reality on the ground in Bangladesh.
Exactly.
And honestly, I think there's a lot of potential there. Bangladesh has an amazing entrepreneurial spirit, and the tech sector is booming. So if we can leverage those strengths, I think we can create a path toward financial empowerment for so many people.
Food for thought, for sure. And for everyone listening, here's one last thing to ponder. Knowing all this, how do you think the economic landscape of Bangladesh might change over the next 10 years? How will these adapted rich dad, poor dad ideas shape the future? It's an exciting thought, right? Keep those wheels turning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See you then.